The sky was burning when Rion opened his eyes. Smoke curled across the ruins of what was once a proud city. Towers lay broken like snapped bones, and streets were filled with ash and shattered glass. The battle was over. Humanity had lost. He could still hear the distant hum of alien ships. They floated above the clouds like metal giants, their shadows stretching over the dead earth. Rion pushed himself up from the rubble and felt pain run through his body. His arm was bleeding, and his clothes were torn, but he was alive. He looked around and saw no other soldiers standing. The ground shook under heavy footsteps. Then he saw them. The alien soldiers marched in formation, their armor glowing with strange lights. They were tall, twice the height of a man, their skin marked with silver lines that pulsed like living circuits. Each one carried a weapon that could cut through steel as if it were paper. Rion stood still, his breath slow, his hands raised. There was no point in fighting now. The war had ended before it began. A group of aliens approached him. Their leader wore black armor carved with symbols that glowed blue. Her presence was different. She moved with the grace of a predator, every step controlled, her head held high. Her scales shimmered like molten silver under the pale light, and her eyes burned with intelligence and power. This was Velra, the commander of the expeditionary force. Every soldier round her lowered their head as she walked. She stopped in front of Rion and studied him without speaking. For a long moment, there was only silence between them. Her gaze moved across his face, his wounds, his torn uniform. Something about him held her attention. Finally, she spoke, her voice clear and sharp like steel. "You are human," she said. The words were not a question, but a statement. Her language carried an accent, but it was perfect, learned through some alien device. Rion looked into her eyes and said nothing. He knew silence could be stronger than words. Velra tilted her head, as if trying to understand something about him. She had seen many humans today, most of them dead, the rest broken and afraid. But this one stood straight, his eyes calm, his jaw set. He was different. She turned to her soldiers and gave a single order. "Take him." Two soldiers stepped forward and grabbed Rion by the arms. Their grip was like iron. He did not resist as they pulled him toward a large transport craft. Velra walked behind them, her eyes never leaving his back. The craft was a sleek black shape with glowing lines that pulsed like veins. Its door opened with a hiss, and they pushed Rion inside. The air smelled strange, like metal and ozone. The floor vibrated under his feet as the engines came to life. Inside, there were other humans sitting in silence, their faces pale with fear. Rion sat among them, but kept his head high. He felt Velra's presence as she entered the craft and took a seat across from him. She said nothing, only watched him as the door closed and the ship lifted into the sky. Through the small window, Rion saw his world below, a land of smoke and fire fading into the distance. The stars appeared above, bright and cold. Somewhere, deep inside, he wondered if this was the end of his story or the beginning of something far greater. The flight was silent except for the hum of the engines. Velra never looked away from him. Her expression was unreadable. But there was something in her eyes, a question, a curiosity, maybe even a challenge. When the ship landed, the door opened to a place that looked nothing like Earth. The air was clean, almost clean. The ground was smooth, and strange towers of metal and glass rose high into the sky, their shapes bending in ways no human architecture ever could. Alien symbols glowed on the walls, and machines moved without sound or visible power. The soldiers led Rion through wide halls filled with light. The walls seemed alive, pulsing with energy as if they were breathing. Other aliens watched as he passed, their eyes cold and full of calculation. Some whispered to each other in a language he did not know, but their tone carried a sense of disbelief. Finally, they reached a chamber unlike the others. It was large and round, with a high ceiling. Covered in glowing patterns, strange machines lined the walls, their surfaces smooth and silver. At the center was a platform surrounded by devices that hummed softly. Velra stepped forward and faced her soldiers. "Leave us," she ordered. The soldiers obeyed without question, leaving Rion alone with her. The doors closed, and the sound of their footsteps faded. For a moment, there was silence. Velra circled him slowly, her sharp eyes studying every detail of his form. She stopped in front of him and spoke in a calm voice that carried hidden strength. "You fought," she said. "Most of your kind ran. You did not." Rian kept his gaze steady. "Running never wins a war." Velra looked at him for a long time. "You survived direct energy exposure," she said, almost to herself. "That is not possible for a human." Rian said nothing. She moved closer, and the light reflected off her silver scales. "What are you hiding?" Rian held her stare. "Nothing you can take from me." Her expression did not change, but there was a flicker in her eyes, something like interest, maybe even respect. She reached for a small device at her belt, a scanner that glowed blue. She pressed it against his arm. The device sparked. A sudden crackle of energy filled the room. The lights flickered, machines trembled, and alarms sounded. Velra jerked her hand back, staring at the scanner as it flickered and died. She looked at him with something new in her eyes. Not anger, not fear, something stranger. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice low. Rian gave her a faint smile. "Maybe your machines don't like me." Velra stared at him, her claws curling slightly as if she felt something she could not explain. For the first time since the war began, the commander of an alien army was uncertain, and she hated uncertainty more than anything. But deep inside, another thought whispered to her, "This human is dangerous," and she had to know why. The chamber doors sealed with a deep metallic sound. Rian stood in the center, his wrists bound by glowing cuffs that pulsed like living metal. The room was brighter than before, filled with strange machines that hummed with power. Every surface was smooth, silver, and curved in ways that looked unnatural to human eyes. Velra stood near one of the consoles, her sharp features glowing under the blue light of the displays. Her hands moved quickly over a panel that had no buttons, only streams of shifting symbols. Rian watched her without fear. His eyes wandered across the room, counting exits, memorizing details. He did not understand the technology, but he studied it like a soldier studies the battlefield. Velra turned to him, her expression calm but her voice carrying command. "Sit." Two alien soldiers stepped forward and forced Rian onto a smooth chair that rose from the floor, as if it had grown there. The cuffs locked into the chair's armrests, glowing brighter as they connected to the structure. Velra dismissed the soldiers with a flick of her hand. "Leave us." The guards hesitated, their strange eyes flicking from her to the human. She repeated the order, her tone sharper this time. "Leave." They obeyed and left the chamber. The door closed with a hiss, and the sound of their heavy steps faded down the corridor, now only to remain inside the commander and the prisoner. Velra walked toward him slowly, her boots making no sound on the smooth floor. She stopped a few steps away and studied him again. Her silver-scaled skin shimmered under the cold light, and her eyes glowed like molten metal. "You survived energy that should have killed you," she said. "No human should endure that. Tell me why." Rian looked at her with calm eyes. "Maybe I'm just lucky." Her gaze hardened. "Luck does not destroy my scanner." She reached to her belt and lifted the small device that had sparked earlier. The metal was blackened at the edges as if burned. Velra held it up for him to see. "This tool has scanned thousands of species. It has never failed." Until now, Rian said nothing. His silence was not defiance. It was strategy. He knew words could reveal weakness, and weakness was something he could not afford in this place. Velra placed the broken scanner on a table and pressed her hand against a glowing panel. From the wall, thin metallic arms unfolded like the legs of an insect. They moved toward Rian with smooth, silent motions. Each arm ended with a tool, some sharp, some flat, some glowing faintly. The chair tilted back slightly, and straps wrapped around his chest. Rian remained calm, his breathing steady. Velra watched him closely, perhaps waiting for fear to show in his eyes. It never came. She moved to a console and spoke softly in her language. Symbols shifted on the screen. The metallic arm stopped an inch from Rian's skin and hovered there as if waiting for a command. I will find out what you are, Velra said. One arm extended a disc-shaped tool that began to hum. It hovered over his head, scanning. Lines of light swept across his skull. The display in front of Velra filled with data. But her eyes narrowed in confusion. This is wrong, she said under her breath. Your energy levels are unstable. Another arm touched his wrist with a thin needle. The moment it made contact, the chamber lights flickered. The hum of the machine stuttered. And Velra froze. The console in front of her glowed red. Warnings filled the screen. Impossible, she whispered. She hit commands rapidly, but the lights dimmed again. The metallic arms jerked and froze midair. Sparks shot from the ceiling. Rian watched silently. Velra stepped back as the entire chamber shuddered. The machines hissed and powered down one by one. The glowing cuffs on Rian's wrists went dark. For the first time, his hands were free. He did not move. He just sat there and stared at her. Velra's breathing was sharp now, and her claws curled slightly as she looked at the dead machines. This cannot happen, she said. Your body rejects our systems. You are disrupting everything. Rian spoke for the first time since the alarms began. His voice was calm and even. Maybe your machines are not as perfect as you think. Velra turned to him with a look that was not anger, but something else. Curiosity, confusion, a hint of unease. She walked closer and stopped right in front of him. She reached out and touched his arm with her bare hand. The moment her skin met his, a shock ran through her body. She gasped and pulled back. Her implants sparked at the edges, sending tiny arcs of light across her armor. Her breathing quickened and her eyes widened. She looked down at her hand as if it no longer belonged to her. What did you do to me? Rian met her gaze without blinking. You touched me. Her face was unreadable now, but inside her mind, chaos was rising. Her neural link was offline. The systems inside her body were failing, and then restarting as if they were fighting something they could not understand. She had never felt weakness before. She had never felt uncertainty. Until now, Velra stepped back slowly, her heart pounding. Against her chest, she stared at the human in the chair, the man who sat calmly while her world of perfect machines bent and broke around him. You are not just human, she said. Her voice was quiet, almost to herself. You are something else. Rian tilted his head slightly. Or maybe you just never understood humans. Velra turned away and walked to the console. But most of the systems were dead. She pressed her hand against the panel, but nothing happened. She looked back at him again, her eyes sharp but uncertain. For the first time in her life, the commander of an empire felt something she had never felt before. Not fear of death, not fear of failure, fear of the unknown. And that fear had a name: human. The chamber was silent except for the faint hum of backup lights. Velra stood near the console, her silver-scaled face lit by the dim glow of emergency power. Her claws tapped against the edge of the table as her thoughts raced. Machines never failed in her world. They were perfect, flawless, beyond the weakness of living things. Yet they had just collapsed because of a human. She turned her gaze to Rian. He was still sitting in the chair, calm, his hands now free because the glowing cuffs had gone dark. He had not moved, though nothing held him down anymore. His stillness was not weakness, it was control. Velra stepped closer. Her armor was sparking at the edges, and her implants were still struggling to restart. She had always felt power in her body, the strength of both flesh and machine. But now she felt something else, a faint vibration under her skin, like a storm, waiting to break. It had started the moment she touched him. Who are you? She asked. Her voice was low, sharp with demand. Rian looked up slowly, his eyes steady. You already know. Her jaw tightened. She did not like riddles. She pressed a command on her wrist, calling for the door to open. But nothing happened. The signal was dead. She tried again. No response. Velra's soldiers would be waiting outside, but they could not hear her. The chamber was sealed by design. No signals in or out during an experiment. It was a security measure to keep subjects from escaping. Now it had turned into a cage for both of them. She moved to another panel and tried to restart the system manually. The screen flickered weakly. but then went black. Her claws curled in frustration. She turned back to Rian, who was watching her with a calm expression, almost like he was waiting for her to understand something. "What are you doing to my systems?" she demanded. "I'm not doing anything," he said. "Maybe they just don't like me." Velra stared at him for a long moment. Then she spoke slowly, as if tasting the words. "You are lying. No human can do this." He said nothing. His silence was heavier than any answer. Suddenly the lights in the room shifted from white to deep blue. The temperature dropped, and the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. Velra's eyes narrowed as she looked around. She felt the pulse again, stronger this time. It was coming from him. She took a step closer and saw it with her own eyes. A faint glow under his skin, near his hands. It was not like any weapon or implant. It was alive. "What is that?" she whispered. Rian lowered his eyes to his hands. The glow faded as quickly as it came. He clenched his fists and looked back at her. "Something you were not ready to find." Velra's throat tightened. She was a commander. She had faced wars, storms, and death without fear. But now, something inside her felt unsettled. She turned back to the console, trying to force her mind into order. She needed answers. Before she could act, the door suddenly shook with a heavy thud. Then another. Velra spun toward it. From outside, voices shouted in her language. The soldiers were trying to override the lock. They had noticed the energy surge. Velra shouted back in their tongue, ordering them to wait. But the pounding continued. The door glowed as they began cutting through it. She cursed under her breath and turned back to Rian. "You will move to the wall and stay there," she said sharply. Rian did not move. Velra's hand went to her weapon, but she froze. For the first time in her life, she wondered if the weapon would even work against him. She pulled it out anyway, the black metal shining with a dull light. "Move," she repeated. Rian stood slowly, his eyes locked on hers. He walked to the wall, his steps steady, his movements calm. He stopped near the smooth surface and turned to face her again. The pounding on the door grew louder. Sparks flew as the soldiers' cutting tools carved glowing lines across the metal. Velra gritted her teeth. If they saw what had happened in this room, questions would rise. Questions she did not want to answer. Not yet. The final line was cut, and the door fell inward with a crash. Armed soldiers stormed in, their weapons raised. Their glowing eyes scanned the scene, the dead machines, the dim lights. Their commander standing tense with her weapon drawn, and the humans standing free. One soldier spoke quickly in their language, asking for orders. Velra raised her hand sharply. "Hold," she commanded. The soldiers froze but kept their weapons aimed at Rian. Velra lowered her gun slowly. "Take him," she said. The soldiers stepped forward, but before they could reach him, the air changed again. A low hum filled the chamber. The walls vibrated. The glow returned to Rian's skin, brighter this time, spreading from his hands to his arms. The soldiers stopped in their tracks. Velra's heart pounded as the blue light around him grew stronger. It was like looking at living fire, but cold and sharp, not warm. "Stay back," Velra shouted, her voice sharp with command. The soldiers hesitated, unsure. Then the hum became a roar. The machines that were dead moments ago flickered to life for a second and then exploded in sparks. The floor shook. The light shattered. And then silence. When Velra opened her eyes, she saw smoke curling from the broken panels. The soldiers were on the ground, stunned but alive. The door was half melted, and Rian was standing in the center of the chaos, his chest rising and falling slowly. The glow around him had faded, but the memory of it burned in her mind. He looked at her, and for the first time, there was something fierce in his eyes. "You wanted to know what I am," he said quietly. "Now you know." Velra stared at him, her thoughts spinning like a storm. For the first time in her life, she had no answer. Outside the chamber, alarms began to scream across the alien station. Something had awakened, and it was human. The alarms echoed through the station like a warning from the stars. Red lights pulsed along the walls, flashing bright against the silver corridors. The sound of boots striking metal floors carried from every direction as soldiers moved to secure the sector. Inside the shattered chamber, Velra stood frozen for a moment, staring at the human who had broken her machines and stunned her guards without lifting a weapon. Rian was calm again, standing in the smoke and flickering light. His breathing was steady, but his eyes burned with a quiet strength that unsettled her. The soldiers who had fallen were stirring, groaning as they tried to rise. Velra's mind raced. If they took him now, if they handed him to the High Council, he would become more than a subject. He would become a weapon they would use. No matter the cost, she had seen what her empire did to rare things. And this human was beyond rare. Rian looked at her with those steady eyes. What happens now? He asked. Velra tightened her grip on the weapon in her hand. She wanted to give the order to take him down, to lock him in a cell deep inside the station. That was the command she had been trained to give. But when she opened her mouth, the words did not come. Instead, she heard herself say something else. Follow me. Rian raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He stepped closer, careful, ready for anything. Velra turned sharply and faced her soldiers, who had now regained their footing. Their glowing eyes burned with confusion and fear. They looked at her, waiting for orders. Stand down, she commanded. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The soldiers hesitated. One spoke in their language, questioning her, but Velra's glare silenced him. I said stand down, she repeated. They obeyed. Lowering their weapons reluctantly, Velra turned and strode out of the chamber. Rian followed, his steps quiet but sure. The soldiers moved aside, their eyes following the strange human as he walked past. None of them understood why their commander would not destroy him. Velra did not explain. The corridor outside was wide and bright, lined with windows that looked out into the black sea of space. Beyond the glass, stars burned like distant fires, and massive warships floated like steel beasts in the void. The alarms continued to wail, and squads of soldiers ran through the passages, heading for the lower levels where they believed the disturbance had begun. Velra walked fast, her boots striking the floor with force. Rian matched her pace without effort. He kept his hands loose at his sides, but his eyes scanned everything. Where are you taking me? He asked quietly. A place they will not find you, Velra said without looking at him. And why are you helping me? She did not answer. She could not answer because she did not know. All she knew was that the thought of handing him over to the council filled her with something she had never felt before: doubt. They turned down another corridor and reached a lift. Velra pressed her hand to the control, and the doors slid open. Inside, the walls glowed faintly, alive with flowing symbols. She stepped in, and Rian followed. The doors closed, sealing them in a capsule of light. The lift dropped silently, carrying them deep into the station. Velra kept her eyes on the wall, but her mind was a storm. She could still feel the echo of his energy in her body, still remember the moment her systems failed when she touched him. That power could change everything if the wrong hands claimed it. Rian studied her face for a long moment before speaking. You do not trust them with me, he said. Velra turned her head slowly and met his gaze. They would turn you into something you are not, she said. Maybe I am already something I am not, Rian replied. Before Velra could respond, the lift slowed and stopped. The doors opened to a dark passage lit only by thin lines of blue light on the floor. Velra stepped out, and Rian followed. This level of the station was silent, far from the command decks and laboratories. She led him through the shadows until they reached a narrow chamber, with a single vessel resting on a landing pad. The ship was sleek and black, built for speed, not war. Velra moved to the control panel and began entering commands. Rian stopped behind her and spoke softly. You are letting me go. Velra paused for a moment before answering. I am giving you a chance. What you do with it is yours to decide. He studied her for a long moment. You know they will come after both of us. She turned to face him fully now, her silver scales glowing faintly in the blue light. Her eyes burned with something fierce. Let them come, she said. The sound of distant boots broke the silence. Velra spun toward the corridor, Soldiers were coming. The echo of their steps grew louder with each passing second. She hit the last command on the panel, and the ship's engines came alive with a deep hum. The vessel's sleek surface shimmered as power flowed through it. Velra grabbed a control rod and pulled it down. The loading ramp lowered slowly. "Go," she ordered. Rian did not move. "Come with me," he said. Velra stared at him, her claws curling slightly. Her duty screamed at her to stay. Her loyalty to the Empire burned inside her. But that loyalty had begun to crack the moment she saw the machines fail. The moment she felt his energy through her skin. The pounding of boots was closer now. Voices shouted commands in her language. They were almost here. Velra looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she chose something other than duty. She stepped onto the ramp. "Move," she said. Rian followed her inside. The ramp lifted, sealing them in the dark interior of the ship. Velra rushed to the controls and slammed her hand onto the panel. The vessel shuddered, then rose smoothly from the pad. The doors to the chamber burst open as soldiers flooded in. They opened fire, bolts of blue energy slamming into the rising ship. But the shields held. Velra pushed the throttle forward. The ship shot through the launch tunnel, metal walls blurring past as alarms screamed louder. And then they were out. The black sea of space opened before them, filled with stars and the cold glow of distant worlds. Behind them, the station burned with light and chaos. Ahead, freedom waited if they could survive what was coming next. Velra gripped the controls tightly, her jaw set. Beside her, Rian sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the stars. Neither of them spoke. There was no need. Both knew the same truth. The escape was only the beginning. The stars stretched endlessly before the small black ship as it glided through the cold void. Velra sat in the pilot's chair, her claws gripping the controls tightly. Her silver armor was scratched and scorched from the escape, but her mind was focused on only one thing: distance. She needed to put as much space as possible between them and the station before the fleet closed in. Rian sat behind her, calm as ever. His eyes studied the swirling patterns of starlight beyond the glass. But his thoughts were elsewhere. He could feel it inside him again. The strange energy that had awakened during the chaos. It pulsed like a second heartbeat, strong and restless, waiting for something. "How far will they chase us?" he asked quietly. Velra did not look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the display, where warning symbols glowed in sharp red lines. "Until they have you or they destroy us," she said. "There is no other outcome?" Rian leaned back in his seat. "Then we should not make it easy for them." Velra gave a short, sharp laugh that had no humor. "You think this is easy. You have no idea what is coming," as if to prove her words. The console beeped with a piercing tone. Velra's eyes flicked to the radar. A formation of ships was moving fast behind them, closing the distance with deadly precision. "They found us," she said. Rian stood and stepped closer to her chair. "How many?" "3 warships," Velra replied, her voice flat. "They will fire as soon as they are in range." The radar pulsed again. The 3 bright dots grew larger. Rian looked at the screen and then at her. "Can this ship outrun them?" Velra shook her head. "No, it was built for speed, but their engines are stronger. We need another plan." Before Rian could speak, the ship shuddered. A beam of blue light streaked past the glass, missing by only a few meters. Then another shot followed, slamming into their shields with a crackling sound. The black hull glowed for a moment but held firm. "They have us," Velra said through clenched teeth. Her claws danced across the controls, sending the ship into a sudden dive. Stars spun wildly as the vessel plunged into a dark field of floating rock. An asteroid belt stretched ahead, a sea of tumbling stone and shadow. "They will not follow us in here," Velra muttered. "Why not?" Rian asked. "Because even hunters fear death," she said, and pulled the ship deeper into the rocks. The asteroids closed around them like giants frozen in motion. Massive stones drifted slowly, their jagged edges gleaming in the faint light of distant suns. Velra guided the ship between them with sharp, precise movements. Each turn brought them inches from destruction. The warships stayed outside the belt. At first, firing from a distance, but their shots could not reach through the thick field of stone. Velra smirked. "Cowards," she whispered. Rian moved to the side window and stared into the endless maze of drifting rock. His hand brushed against the cold metal of the wall. The strange energy inside him pulsed again, stronger this time. He felt the vibrations spread through his arms, reaching for something beyond him. Velra noticed the glow at the edge of his fingers. "Control it," she snapped. "I am trying." Rian said, his voice tight. She wanted to shout at him, to demand answers, but there was no time. A sharp alarm filled the cockpit. Velra glanced at the display and cursed under her breath. "They are coming in." Rian looked at the screen. The warships had split formation. One of them was moving into the belt, weaving through the stones with powerful thrusters. The other just stayed outside, blocking any chance of escape. "They will corner us," Velra said. "Unless—" She stopped, her mind racing. There was only one way. But it was dangerous. She turned to Rian. "You wanted another plan? Here it is. We use the storm." Rian frowned. "Storm?" Velra pointed to the map on the screen. A glowing mass spun in the distance beyond the belt, a vortex of flashing light and swirling debris. "Iron storm," she said. "It will burn their sensors and tear their ships apart if they come too close. If we can reach it first, we disappear. And if we cannot?" Rian asked. Velra's cold smile was answer enough. She pushed the ship harder, weaving through the deadly rocks. Behind them, the warship closed in, its weapons glowing as it charged another shot. The blast came like a star tearing through the dark. It struck the edge of an asteroid, sending molten fragments spinning in all directions. One piece slammed into their shields, making the ship shudder violently. "Hold on," Velra barked as she sent the vessel into a sharp roll. The black hull skimmed past a mountain of stone, missing it by less than a meter. Rian gripped the edge of the chair. His heart pounded, but the energy inside him surged with it. He felt heat in his chest, light crawling under his skin. Without thinking, he pressed his hand to the wall. The metal glowed faintly where his fingers touched. Velra saw it, for a heartbeat. Her breath caught. Then another blast hit the rear shields, pulling her attention back. "Do something useful," she growled. Rian closed his eyes. He did not know how, but he reached inside himself, searching for the pulse. It answered. Power flowed from his core to his hands, through the ship's frame. The engines roared louder, brighter, burning with sudden force. Velra stared at the readings. The ship's speed was climbing, far beyond its limits. She looked at him, shock flashing across her face. "What are you?" "Just fly," Rian said. She gritted her teeth and did as he said. The black ship shot forward like a spear of light, tearing through the asteroid field. The pursuing warship tried to follow, but the gap widened with every second. The storm grew closer, a spinning sea of fire and lightning filling the void. The vortex loomed ahead, swirling with blue and white. Fury! Velra's claws gripped the controls so hard they cut the metal. "If we go in there, there is no way back," she warned. "Then we do not go back," Rian said. The warship behind them fired one last desperate shot. The beam streaked through the dark, but it hit nothing. The black ship dove into the storm, swallowed by the raging light. Outside, the hunters stopped. No one followed. Inside, the world became a whirl of brightness and sound. Energy slammed against the hull. Lightning danced across the glass, and gravity twisted like a living thing. Velra fought the controls, but the ship shook violently. Rian placed both hands on the wall. The glow in his skin flared brighter than ever. The storm's rage seemed to bend around them, as if the chaos itself obeyed his will. Velra looked at him, her eyes wide. For the first time, she felt something she had never felt before. Not fear of death, but fear of the unknown. And in that moment, she knew the truth. The storm was not the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The human sitting beside her was. The ship trembled violently inside the iron storm. Lightning crackled across the windows, and energy waves rocked the vessel. Like a small boat in a wild sea, Velra gripped the controls tightly, struggling to keep the ship steady. Beside her, Rian stood, his hands pressed against the wall. The strange energy that lived inside him burned brighter than ever. The storm's power seemed to wrap around him, like the galaxy itself was answering to his call. Velra's heart pounded. She had never seen anything like this. It was more than strength. It was something ancient and deep, something no machine or weapon could match. Suddenly, the storm's fury calmed. The ship floated gently in a quiet space that was neither light nor dark. Outside the window, the stars shone clearly again. But everything felt different. The air was charged, full of silent meaning. Velra turned to Rian. "What just happened?" she asked. Rian looked down at his hands, then back at the storm outside. "I don't know," he said softly. "It felt like the storm was waiting for me, like it was part of me." Velra frowned. "You mean the storm is alive?" Rian nodded slowly. "Not alive like you or me, but it's like a force, an old force that moves through the universe. I think I'm connected to it somehow." Velra studied his face. There was no lie there, only truth and confusion. Why a human?" Rian shrugged. "Maybe I was born with this, or maybe it chose me. I don't have answers yet." The silence grew heavy. Velra realized she had to tell him something important she had hidden since the day she met him. "There's more to you than you know," she said. "The Council wants to use you not just as a weapon, but as a key." "A key to what?" Rian asked, his eyes sharp. Velra took a deep breath. "The Empire has ancient technology hidden in the deepest places of space. Technology from before even we can remember. It is said to hold power that could change everything." Rian's brow furrowed. "And they think I can unlock it?" "Yes," Velra said quietly. "Your energy matches the signal they detect from those places. You are the only one who can open the gates to that power." Rian sat down slowly. "That is why they chased us. They are afraid, but they want to control me." Velra nodded. "If they get you, it will mean the end of freedom for many." Rian looked up at her. "What will you do now?" Velra hesitated. "I thought I would deliver you to them, but now I do not know. I want to protect you, to find a way to keep that power safe." They were silent for a moment. Then, without warning, the ship shook again. The storm's calm was over. Outside, the dark clouds swirled back with fury. The iron storm was alive once more. Velra hit the controls. "We must move. They will not stop hunting us." Suddenly, the communication panel beeped loudly. A voice came through, cold and sharp. "Velra, you are a traitor. Surrender the human, or you will be destroyed." Velra's eyes flashed. "Tell them I will never give him up." The voice laughed cruelly. "Then we will hunt you across the stars. No one escapes the Empire." Velra cut the connection. She turned to Rian. "They will send everything they have. We cannot stay here." Rian stood, his energy pulsing like a storm inside him. "Then we leave. We find those ancient places. We unlock the truth." Velra smiled for the first time in days. Together, the black ship surged forward, leaving the iron storm behind. Ahead lay the unknown. But for the first time, Velra and Rian were not running. They were ready to face whatever waited beyond the stars. The black ship moved steadily through the quiet stars. Velra and Rian sat side by side in the small cockpit, watching the endless darkness light up with distant suns. The dangers behind them were many, but the future held something new, a chance to change the galaxy. Rian's energy pulsed softly now, no longer wild like before. It had become a calm power, steady and strong. He looked out the window, thinking about everything he had learned, about the Empire that hunted him, about Velra, who had saved him and now stood beside him like a shield. Velra broke the silence. "We are close," she said. "The ancient place the Council fears is near." Rian turned to her. "Are you ready?" She nodded. "More than ever." The ship's sensors beeped softly, pointing to a small planet far ahead. It was a quiet world, covered in blue oceans and green lands. The surface was untouched, with no signs of cities or machines. Velra remembered the old stories. This was one of the lost worlds, where the ancient technology was said to rest. They prepared to land. As the ship touched the planet's surface, the ground beneath seemed to hum with quiet energy. Velra and Rian stepped out into the fresh air, feeling the weight of history around them. The sky above was bright and clear. Strange ruins stood nearby, massive stone structures covered in glowing symbols. Velra approached carefully, her eyes wide with wonder. This was no ordinary place. It held secrets older than any star. Rian felt the energy inside him respond. It moved like a river flowing through his veins. He placed his hand on one of the stones. The symbols lit up beneath his touch, casting blue light across the ground. Velra watched as the ancient technology awoke. "This is it," she whispered. "The power the council wants." Suddenly, a voice spoke from the ruins. It was calm and deep, without anger or fear. "Welcome, travelers." Velra and Rian turned to see a figure step forward, a being of light, neither human nor alien. It was a guardian, left behind to protect the secrets of the ancient world. "You have come far," the guardian said, "but the power you seek is not just strength or weapons. It is knowledge, wisdom. The future of the galaxy depends on how you use it." Rian looked at Velra, then back at the guardian. "We want to end the fighting, to stop the Empire from hurting more people." The guardian nodded. "That is the way of true power." The ruins began to glow brighter, and a soft hum filled the air. Symbols floated from the stones, forming a path ahead. Velra and Rian followed, their steps steady and sure. They reached a chamber filled with light. At the center was a crystal, glowing with a warm energy. Rian felt it calling to him, the storm inside him matching its pulse. He reached out and touched the crystal. Instantly, images filled his mind, stars being born, civilizations rising and falling, wars fought and peace made. Velra saw his face change as he understood. "This is the story of the galaxy," she said softly. "The good and the bad." Rian nodded. "And the choice we have." The guardian spoke again. "You are the key to a new path. Use this knowledge to unite, not to destroy, to protect, not to conquer." Velra and Rian looked at each other. They knew the road ahead would be hard. The Empire would not give up easily. But now they had something stronger than weapons or ships. They had hoped. As they left the ruins, the sky above seemed brighter, filled with promise. The black ship waited, ready to take them back to the stars. Velra smiled. "Are you ready to change the galaxy?" Rian smiled back. Together, they stepped into the ship, their hearts full of determination. The stars awaited, and with them, a new dawn for all.